The median listed price was $1,300, but the median closed price was only $1,000. That is a 300 drop, far more significant than the $50 average drop we see across the city. The law says they are entitled to statutory demands equal to 1 month's rent plus their reasonable attorney's fees and court costs. This is not something you want to get wrong. My advice is simple: if you own or manage 3 or more units, you need to review it. Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Philly Landlord Guy. I'm your host Yuri Skripnichenko, the guy with the crazy last name. Just think of me as your Philly Landlord Guy. And on today's solo episode, we will dive into 19135 zip code, and we will talk about market stuff with no fluff. First, we'll cover some big picture news, including a positive shift in Philly's economy and national trend. That's actually good news for long-term landlords. Then we will look at the latest rental numbers for the entire city before doing our neighborhood deep dive into zip code 19135. That's covering Visanoming, Tacony, and part of Frankford. Finally, and this is critical, I'm going to break down a brand new Philadelphia law regarding security deposit that goes into effect very soon. You need to know how this will impact your business. So let's go into it. First, some good news. For years, Philly has had the unfortunate to held the title of the biggest, poorest city in the States. But according to the recent data, that's no longer the case. While there is a long way to go, rising incomes and economic development have lifted us from the bottom to the second spot. So now we are no longer the biggest, poorest city. Houston took that number 1 spot as Philly poverty rate dropped below 20%, and follow right below Philly is New York. So we have now Houston, Philly, and New York. So for us as investors, this is a powerful long-term indicator. It signals a strong, more resilient tenant base and healthier economic environment for property values to grow. On top of that, the recent Newsweek article highlights a major national trend that Gen Z is becoming a generation of renters. They faced with high home pricing and interest rates. Younger people are choosing to rent for longer. And for Philly landlords, that means the pipeline of potential tenants isn't shrinking, it's growing. And the demand for quality rental housing is set to remain strong for years to come, which is exactly what you want to see as a long-term investor. So before we zoom in into 19135, let's look at rental market for the city as a whole, as entire city for September. These numbers gives us a baseline for what's happening everywhere. So according to MLS, there were 1,841 units listed for rent, and 1,750 of these were rented. The average days on the market for the whole city was 51 days. On the pricing point, the median listed price was $1,800 and the median closed price was $1,750. So on average, landlords are seeing a slight drop of about $50 between their asking price and what they actually get. So now keep those numbers, 51 days on the market and 50 price drop, in your mind as we dive into 19135, because the comparison is interesting. So this 19135 covers several distinct neighborhoods, which are Visanoming, Tacony, and parts of Frankfurt. This is a classic working class part of the city. It's not trendy, and that's its strength. Let's look at the numbers because they are telling a story. According to latest census data, the median household income in 19135 is roughly $51,000 or almost 52. When you compare that to median for the entire city of Philadelphia, which is $60,000, it confirms that we know already this is a solid working class area. The income level is a key reason why it's a strong cash flow market. The rents are affordable for the residents, which leads to stability. There are also higher than average owner occupancy rate, which tells you people put down roots here. Now let's look at the most recent data from MLS for September and compare to the city-wide numbers. The average days on the market in 19135 was 40 days. That's more than a week faster than the city average of 51 days. It's almost 2 weeks faster, which is a really strong sign of a high demand in this neighborhood compared to the city as a whole. But here's where it gets interesting, especially for pricing. The median listed price was $1,300, but the median closed price was only $1,000. That is a 300 drop, far more significant than the $50 average drop we see across the city. I have to add that important context again. This is a smaller area, and it's based on a very small sample size of only 3 closed leases for the month and 7 listed properties. So the number is 1,300 and 1,000 between 7 and 3 properties, which is not a lot. But even so, it shows that while demand is strong, properties are renting faster than the city average. Landlords in the specific area who are overpricing their units are being forced to make major corrections to get them filled. My takeaway for investors, 19135 is a bread and butter cash flow market. You buy here for stable, long-term tenants. And based on the latest data, you need to be realistic with your pricing to capitalize on strong demand and avoid sitting vacant. Before we get into this new city law, I want to thank our sponsor, TrustArt Realty. If you manage properties in Philly, you know it's not easy. That's why TrustArt Realty is offering all of our listeners a free rental analysis or management advice session. Email us at trustartrealty@phillylandlordguy.com or go to trustartrealty.com to schedule your session. All right, this is extremely important for landlords to hear. On September 3, 2025, the mayor signed a new bill into law that changes how we handle security deposits. It becomes effective 90 days after being adopted, so early December 2025. First, who does this apply to? This law is for landlords who own, operate, or manage 3 or more rental units. If you're a small landlord with 1 or 2 rental units, you are exempt from this law. Here's the new rule. If you charge a security deposit for the first year of the lease that is more than 1 month's rent, you are now required to offer your tenants the option to pay that deposit in installment plan. Let me break down the payment plan that you have to offer. The tenant must pay the amount equal to the first month's rent upfront as a lump sum. The remaining amount is then paid in 3 equal monthly payments, starting with the month after tenancy begins. For example, if the rent is $1,500 and you charge $2,000 deposit, the rent pays $1,500 upfront. Remaining $500 is paid over the next 3 months. And you can't charge more for the installment option. The total deposit has to be the same. Now, here is the penalty. If you have 3 or more units and fail to offer this installment plan when you required, a tenant can take you to court. The law says they are entitled to statutory demands equal to 1 month's rent plus their reasonable attorney's fees and court cost. This is not something you want to get wrong. My advice is simple. If you own or manage 3 or more units, you need to review your security deposit policies right now. Make sure your lease and your procedures are updated before this laws take effect in December. So to wrap up, the long-term outlook for Philly is positive. Neighborhoods like Tacony and Visanoming offer stable investment opportunities with high demand, and new security deposit law is common that larger landlords must prepare for. It is critical to stay for you on top of these changes to protect your investment. If you found this episode helpful, please follow, leave a review, and share this with another landlord. If you have questions or want me to cover your neighborhood next, send an email or drop a comment, like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for listening, and catch you next time.